Amy Rodriguez stepped off the transport ship and into Gateway Prime for the first time. The space station stretched out before her like a massive metal city floating in the void. She carried one bag with her belongings and a tablet with her work assignment. 3 years had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council, and Amy was part of the second wave of humans sent to live and work among the stars. The arrival terminal buzzed with activity. Dozens of alien species moved through the crowds, speaking languages that her translator earpiece struggled to keep up with. Amy saw beings with 4 arms, others with scales, some that floated instead of walked, and a few that looked almost human except for their bright purple skin. She gripped her bag tighter and followed the signs toward the residential quarter. Her new home was a small room in Section 7, where most of the maintenance workers lived. The walls were gray metal, and the bed was harder than anything on Earth, but it had a window showing the stars outside. Amy sat on the edge of the bed and took a deep breath. This was it. This was her new life. The next morning, Amy reported to the maintenance division on Deck 12. Her supervisor was a short, round alien named Blix, who reminded her of a walking mushroom. Blix spoke through a series of chirps that her translator turned into English. "You are the new human engineer. Good. We need more workers who understand Earth-style technology. Many of our systems now use human designs." Blix handed her a datapad. "You will work with Team 4. They are fixing the air filtration units in the lower sections." Team 4 consisted of 3 aliens. Krill was an insectoid being with 6 limbs and compound eyes that shimmered green in the light. He stood about 5 feet tall and moved with quick, nervous energy. Next was Pell, a furry creature from the Ven species who barely reached Amy's shoulder. Pell spoke in a soft, timid voice and kept his eyes down most of the time. The third member was Dax, a thin being made of what looked like living crystal that hummed when it moved. "Welcome to the team," Krill said, his voice clicking slightly. "We heard a human was coming. You are the first one in our division." Amy smiled. "Happy to be here. What are we working on today?" Krill showed her the maintenance schedule. The lower decks needed constant repairs because the filtration systems were old and broke down often. It was hard work, but Amy liked keeping her hands busy. She learned quickly that Krill was patient and knowledgeable, Pell was shy but skilled with small repairs, and Dax communicated mostly through light patterns that her translator struggled to interpret. The first week passed smoothly. Amy learned the layout of the station, figured out which cafeteria served food humans could actually eat, and started to understand the complex social dynamics of Gateway Prime. She noticed that certain species seemed to have more power than others. The tall, elegant Kalari controlled most of the administrative positions. The small technological thinkers ran the science departments, and the Drex dominated the security and enforcement sectors. The Drex were impossible to miss. They stood 7 feet tall with thick scales covering their bodies, powerful limbs, and faces that looked like a cross between a lizard and a dragon. They walked through the corridors like they owned them, and most other species moved out of their way. Amy first encountered Vorgath during her second week. She was in the maintenance bay working on a broken air recycler when a shadow fell over her workstation. She looked up and saw a Drex warrior staring down at her. His scales were dark green with scars marking his arms and chest. He wore the uniform of a station enforcer, but the insignia was old and faded. "You are in my section," Vorgath said. His voice was deep and rough like grinding stone. Amy checked her datapad. "The work order says Deck 12, Bay 3. "This is where I'm supposed to be," Vorgath snorted, a sound like steam escaping. "Everything below Deck 10 belongs to me. When I walk through, you stop working and show respect." Amy felt her jaw tighten, but she forced herself to stay calm. "I have a job to do. The air recycler needs to be fixed by end of shift." For a moment, Vorgath just stared at her. Then he laughed, a booming sound that echoed off the metal walls. He turned and walked away, his heavy footsteps making the floor vibrate. Krill scurried over after Vorgath left. "You should be careful around him. Vorgath is dangerous." "Who is he?" Amy asked. "He used to be a warrior on the Drex homeworld. Now he is assigned to station security, but mostly he just patrols the lower decks and causes trouble." Krill's antennae drooped. "He takes food rations from workers. He damages equipment and blames us. He pushes people around because he is bigger and stronger. Doesn't security do anything about it?" Pell spoke up quietly from his corner. "Vorgath has friends in the Drex delegation. They protect him. We have complained many times, but nothing changes." Amy felt anger rising in her chest. Back on Earth, she had grown up in a neighborhood where bullies existed too. She had learned early that backing down only made things worse. But this was different. This was an alien station with alien rules, and she was representing all of humanity. Over the next few weeks, Amy watched Vorgath operate. He was clever about his bullying, doing it in places where official cameras did not reach. He would take Krill's food and dare him to report it. He would shove Pell into walls hard enough to leave marks, but not hard enough to require medical attention. He assigned the worst jobs to the species he considered weak. Amy kept her head down and did her work. She filed official complaints through the proper channels, documenting everything she saw. The responses were always the same. "Your complaint has been received and will be investigated." Nothing ever happened. Then one day, Vorgath destroyed a week of Krill's work. The insectoid had been carefully rebuilding a critical power relay, and Vorgath walked through and knocked all the components onto the floor with one sweep of his arm. Krill's antennae trembled. "Why did you do that? I need those parts." Vorgath grabbed Krill by his thorax and lifted him off the ground. "Because I wanted to. What will you do about it?" "Bug." Amy stood up from her workstation. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her voice came out steady. "Put him down." Vorgath turned his head slowly to look at her. His eyes were yellow with vertical slits. "What did you say, human?" "I said put him down. Now." Vorgath stared at Amy for a long moment. Then he laughed and dropped Krill onto the floor. The insectoid scrambled away, his legs clicking against the metal deck. Vorgath took 2 heavy steps toward Amy until he stood directly in front of her. She had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "You think you are brave, little human?" Vorgath's breath smelled like sulfur. "Your species just arrived. You know nothing about how things work here." Amy kept her voice calm. "I know that you are supposed to be security. Not a bully who picks on people smaller than you." The other workers in the bay had stopped what they were doing. Everyone watched the confrontation in silence. Vorgath's scaled face twisted into something that might have been a smile. "You amuse me. On my world, the strong lead and the weak follow. That is the natural way. Here on this station it is the same. I am strong. You are weak. Simple." "Then why do you need to prove it by destroying people's work?" Vorgath leaned down until his face was inches from hers. "Because I can, and there is nothing you can do about it." He turned and walked out of the bay, his footsteps echoing down the corridor. As soon as he was gone, Krill hurried over to Amy. "You should not have done that. Now he will target you too." Amy helped Krill pick up the scattered components from the floor. "Someone has to stand up to him." Dax hummed softly, and Amy's translator turned it into words. "Standing up and surviving are different things. Vorgath has hurt many beings who challenged him." That evening, Amy went to her room and filed another official complaint. She wrote down exactly what happened, included the time and location, and listed Krill and the others as witnesses. She sent it to station administration and security. The automated response said her complaint would be reviewed within 5 business days. The next morning, Amy arrived at work to find her locker had been broken into. All her personal tools were gone. The expensive ones her father had given her before she left Earth. The data pad with her family photos, even her spare work uniform, everything. Blix waddled over, chirping in concern. "What happened here?" "Someone broke in and took my things." "Report it to security." Amy called security from the wall terminal. An officer arrived 30 minutes later, looked at the empty locker, and took notes on his pad. He was a thin, gray-skinned alien with 4 eyes. "Any idea who did this?" the officer asked. Amy hesitated. She had no proof, but she knew. "I think it might have been Vorgath." The officer's expression did not change. "That is a serious accusation. Do you have evidence?" "No, but yesterday I confronted him about his behavior and he threatened me." "I see. I will file a report. But without evidence or witnesses to the actual theft, there is not much we can do." The officer left without another word. Krill helped Amy requisition replacement tools from supply. "I am sorry this happened. Vorgath is getting worse." Over the following days, Amy's life on the station became increasingly difficult. Her work assignments changed without notice, always to the hardest and dirtiest jobs. The filtration units in the waste processing section. The cooling systems near the reactor core, where the temperature made her sweat through her uniform. The external maintenance hatches where she had to wear a pressure suit for hours. Someone kept contaminating her workspace with chemicals that made her eyes water. Her food orders from the cafeteria were always wrong or missing items. The lights in her quarters would flicker on and off in the middle of the night, leaving her exhausted. Amy knew it was Vorgath. She saw him watching her sometimes, that same amused expression on his scaled face, but she never caught him doing anything directly. He was careful. He knew exactly how to make someone's life miserable without leaving evidence. She filed more complaints. Each one disappeared into the bureaucratic system of Gateway Prime without result. She tried talking to her human supervisors, but they told her the same thing everyone else did. "Keep your head down," said Greg Palmer, one of the senior human engineers. "We are still new here. The diplomatic mission is fragile. We cannot afford to cause problems with the Drex delegation." "So I am just supposed to let him harass me?" Greg sighed. "I know it is not fair, but Vorgath has powerful connections. The Drex are one of the founding members of the Galactic Council. If this turns into a major incident, it could damage Earth's position." Amy felt frustration building inside her chest, like pressure in a tank. "What about all the other species he bullies? Krill, Pell, and dozens of others. They have been suffering for years. That is not our problem to solve. We need to focus on keeping humanity's reputation clean." Amy left the meeting feeling angry and helpless. She understood the political reality, but it felt wrong to stay silent while Vorgath continued hurting people. That night, she could not sleep. She lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the times in her life she had faced bullies. In school, in her neighborhood, even at her old job on Earth. She had learned that bullies only stopped when someone stood up to them. But how could she stand up to a 7-foot warrior from a species that valued strength above everything? She was just one human engineer with a wrench and a data pad. The harassment continued for 2 more weeks. Vorgath seemed to enjoy the game. He would walk past her in the corridors and deliberately bump into her, sending her stumbling into the wall. He would stand in doorways and make her ask permission to pass. He would take her tools from her workstation while she was using them and dare her to take them back. Other species watched but said nothing. Even the humans avoided her, worried that association with her would make them targets too. Only Krill stayed loyal, working beside her and offering quiet words of support. "You are stronger than you think," Krill told her one day. "I see it in the way you work, in the way you do not give up. Vorgath sees it too. That is why he tries so hard to break you." Amy appreciated the kindness. but she felt worn down. Every day was a battle just to get through her shift. Her complaints to administration had become routine, automated responses that meant nothing. The system was not going to help her. Then came the day when Vorgath decided words and harassment were not enough anymore. Amy was working in an isolated section of the maintenance bay, deep in the lower decks where few beings went. She was replacing a damaged power coupling when she heard the heavy footsteps behind her. She turned to see Vorgath blocking the only exit. Behind him stood two other Dreks, both wearing enforcer uniforms. A crowd had begun to gather in the corridor, drawn by some instinct that something was about to happen. Vorgath's yellow eyes gleamed in the dim light. "Enough games, human. You have disrespected me for the last time. Now you will learn your place." Amy's heart hammered in her chest, but she stood her ground. She had nowhere to run, and she was tired of running anyway. "I have not disrespected you. I have just refused to be afraid of you." "Same thing." Vorgath stepped closer. "On my world, when someone challenges a warrior's authority, we settle it the old way. You apologize publicly and submit, or you face Drek's justice." The crowd had grown larger. Amy could see Krill and Pell at the edge, their faces filled with worry. She could see a few other humans, too, trying to signal her to back down. This was her chance to end the harassment. All she had to do was apologize and bow her head, but the words would not come. Every instinct in her body screamed that giving in to a bully only made things worse. "No," Amy said simply. The corridor fell completely silent. Vorgath's eyes narrowed. For a moment, Amy thought he might simply attack her right there. His muscles tensed under his scales and his clawed hands flexed at his sides. The two other Dreks behind him moved forward slightly, but Vorgath raised one hand to stop them. "You refuse?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "You actually refuse?" "I have done nothing wrong. I will not apologize for standing up to a bully." A low rumble came from Vorgath's chest, like distant thunder. Then suddenly he threw his head back and laughed. The sound echoed through the corridor, harsh and mocking. The crowd shifted nervously, unsure what was happening. "I was hoping you would say that." Vorgath stepped into the center of the open space in the maintenance bay. "You humans think you are so clever. You discovered nuclear power and built some decent ships, and now you believe you belong among the great species of the galaxy." He turned to face the crowd, addressing them like a performer. "But you are soft. You come from a weak world with weak gravity. You have no natural armor, no claws, no venom. You are prey animals who got lucky with technology." Amy felt her face flush with anger, but she kept quiet. Vorgath was playing to the audience now, building up to something. "In Drek's culture we have a tradition," Vorgath continued. He spread his arms wide, exposing his broad chest. The scales there were thick and overlapping like natural armor plates. "When a warrior is challenged by someone far beneath them, they offer mercy. They give the challenger one free strike, one chance to prove their strength." He turned back to Amy. His arms still spread wide in the traditional challenge pose. His chest was fully exposed, vulnerable. The gesture was simultaneously an offer and an insult. "So I give you this chance, human. One free hit. Strike me with all your strength." His mouth twisted into a cruel smile. "Show everyone here what human power looks like. Go on, hit me," the crowd murmured. Amy could hear the whispers, some in languages her translator could not keep up with. She saw the other humans in the crowd making frantic gestures, shaking their heads, telling her to walk away. This was a trap. Everyone knew it. When her punch bounced harmlessly off his armored chest, Vorgath would have the perfect excuse. She attacked him first, in front of witnesses. He could retaliate and claim self-defense. He could put her in the medical bay for weeks, maybe months, and face no consequences. It would be the ultimate humiliation for humanity. Amy looked at Vorgath standing there with his arms spread, so confident and arrogant. She thought about all the weeks of harassment. She thought about Krill being lifted by his throat. She thought about Pell flinching every time a Drex walked by. She thought about all the beings on this station who suffered in silence because the system protected the bullies. Then she thought about physics. Amy had studied engineering on Earth. She understood force and momentum and kinetic energy. She knew that Earth's gravity was 1.0 standard, while the Drex homeworld was only 0.7. Every human who grew up on Earth developed bones and muscles built to carry weight in higher gravity. Every day of her life, her body had been training under conditions 28% harder than what Vorgath was used to. She thought about human evolution, about persistence hunters who could chase prey for hours until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. About apes who could lift and throw and fight with shocking strength. About the fact that humans were not actually weak, they had just been compared to species with different advantages. Vorgath was still laughing. "What is wrong, human? Are you afraid? Perhaps you are smarter than I thought. Walk away now, and I will only make you apologize." Amy stepped forward. Her heart was pounding, but her mind was clear. She thought about every boxing match she had watched, every self-defense class her father had made her take. She thought about Bruce Lee, Muhammad Ali, and every other human fighter who had proven that technique and force could overcome size. She planted her feet in a solid stance. She rotated her hips and shoulders the way she had been taught. She put her entire body weight behind the movement, everything she had, focused into one point, and she punched Vorgath in the center of his exposed chest. The sound was like a crack of thunder in the metal corridor. Amy's fist connected with Vorgath's sternum with every pound of force her human body could generate. Force built over 26 years of living under Earth gravity. Force multiplied by proper technique and desperate determination. For one frozen moment, nothing happened. Vorgath's expression was still locked in that arrogant smile. Then his eyes went wide. His mouth opened in a silent gasp. The smile vanished, replaced by shock and then pure agony. Amy pulled her hand back and staggered backward, shaking her fist. Her knuckles hurt, but nothing felt broken. She watched as Vorgath's face twisted in pain. He tried to take a breath, but something was wrong. His chest made a horrible clicking sound. Then he fell. The massive Drex warrior crashed backward like a falling tree. He hit a support beam and crumpled to the floor, gasping. His hands clutched at his chest. His scales had actually cracked, fracture lines spiderwebbing out from the impact point. Blood, dark blue and thick, seeped between his clawed fingers. The corridor erupted in chaos. The two other Drex rushed forward to help Vorgath. Aliens scattered in every direction. Some ran away. Others pushed closer to see. Amy heard Krill's voice shouting her name, but it sounded distant and muffled. She stood there, her hand still tingling, watching Vorgath struggle to breathe. Each gasp sounded wet and wrong. He tried to push himself up with his arms, but collapsed again. His yellow eyes found Amy, and for the first time she saw something other than arrogance there. She saw fear. One of the other Drex was shouting into a communication device. "Medical emergency! Deck 12 maintenance bay! Officer down! Repeat! Officer down!" Amy's legs felt weak. She had not meant to hurt him this badly. She had just wanted him to stop, to understand that she would not be pushed around anymore. But something had gone terribly wrong. The physics she had counted on had worked better than she imagined. The crowd pressed in around her. Hands grabbed her arms. She heard voices speaking in urgent tones but could not process the words. Her translator earpiece was buzzing with too many languages at once. More Drex security officers arrived, pushing through the crowd. One of them looked at Vorgath on the floor, then at Amy. "You did this?" Amy found her voice. "He challenged me. He told me to hit him. Everyone saw it. Detain her." The officer's voice was cold and hard. Strong hands grabbed Amy's arms and pulled them behind her back. Restraints clicked around her wrists. She did not resist. The medical team had arrived now, loading Vorgath onto a stretcher. He was still conscious, still gasping for air. Blood pooled on the floor where he had fallen. As the security officers led Amy away, she looked back at the crowd. Krill was there, his antennae drooping. Pell had his face covered with his paws. The human workers stood together, their expressions a mix of shock and fear. And then Amy saw something else. Scattered throughout the crowd, among all the different species, she saw looks of satisfaction. Small smiles quickly hidden. Eyes that gleamed with something that might have been approval. These were the beings Vorgath had bullied and tormented for years. They had watched him fall, and part of them was glad. The security officers pulled her into the corridor and toward the detention center. Amy's mind raced. She had just seriously injured a Drex warrior. The political consequences would be enormous. The human diplomatic mission would be furious. Earth's position in the Galactic Council could be damaged. But as they led her away, one thought kept repeating in her mind. She had warned him. Everyone had seen it. Vorgath had demanded that she hit him, had exposed himself and mocked her, and she had simply done exactly what he asked. He had laughed and said, "Go on, hit me." She did. And now he might never stand up again. The detention cell was small and cold. Amy sat on the metal bench and stared at the wall. Her right hand was swollen, the knuckles bruised and tender. A medical officer had examined it and said nothing was broken, just deep bruising. Then they had left her alone. Hours passed. Amy replayed the moment over and over in her mind. The sound of impact, the look on Vorgath's face, the crack of breaking bone beneath scales. She had not known her punch would do that much damage. She had hoped to surprise him, maybe bruise him enough to make him respect her. But this was so much worse. The door opened and two human officials entered. One was Greg Palmer, the senior engineer who had told her to keep her head down. The other was Linda Hayes, the diplomatic liaison for Earth's mission on Gateway Prime. Linda's face was tight with anger. "Do you have any idea what you have done?" Linda's voice was sharp. "The Drex delegation is demanding your immediate prosecution. They want you sent to their homeworld to face their justice system." Amy looked up. "He challenged me. He told me to hit him in front of 50 witnesses." "That does not matter. You put a Drex enforcer in critical condition. The medical report says you shattered his sternum, broke 3 ribs, and punctured his primary lung. He may never recover full function." The words hit Amy like physical blows. She had known it was bad, but hearing the details made it real. "I did not know it would hurt him that badly." Greg spoke more gently. "Amy, we understand you were being harassed. But there were proper channels. You should have let the diplomatic corps handle it." "I tried the proper channels. I filed 15 complaints. Nothing happened." Linda waved her hand dismissively. "That is not the point. The point is that you have created an interstellar incident. Earth has been part of the Galactic Council for only 3 years. We are still proving ourselves. And now one of our citizens has nearly killed a member of a founding species." Amy felt her anger rising again. So I was supposed to just take his abuse? Let him destroy my life and hurt everyone around me because Earth needs to be polite? "Yes," Linda said flatly. "That is exactly what you were supposed to do. Welcome to galactic politics." The meeting ended with Linda informing Amy that a tribunal would convene in 3 days. Representatives from multiple species would judge her case. Until then, she would remain in detention. Earth's legal team would try to defend her, but the outlook was not good. After they left, Amy lay down on the bench and closed her eyes. She thought about her family back on Earth. Her father would be devastated. Her younger brother would probably think she was a hero. Her mother would just worry. They had been so proud when she was selected for the Gateway Prime assignment. The next 2 days were a blur of legal meetings. Earth's lawyer, a stern woman named Patricia Cole, explained the charges. Assault on a station officer, causing grievous bodily harm, disrupting station peace. Each charge carried serious penalties, from years in detention to deportation, back to Earth in disgrace. "Our best strategy is to argue self-defense and provocation," Patricia said. "We have witnesses who saw Vorgath challenge you. But the problem is that Drexlaw sees his challenge as an honor. By accepting it and winning, you have humiliated not just him, but his entire culture. So I was supposed to let him beat me instead?" In their view, yes. A proper response would have been to decline the challenge and submit to his authority. Amy shook her head. "That is insane. That is alien culture. We are not on Earth anymore." The day of the tribunal arrived. Amy was led into a large chamber filled with representatives from dozens of species. The room was circular with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. She stood on that platform, feeling very small and alone. The tribunal was led by a Kalari judge named Seniors Ven, a tall being with silver skin and 4 graceful arms. Next to him sat representatives from the Drex delegation, all of them glaring at Amy with undisguised hatred. There were also representatives from the Thinkers, the Ven, and a dozen other species she did not recognize. The charges were read aloud. Medical experts testified about Vorgath's injuries. He was alive, but would never be at full combat capability again. His career as a warrior was finished. The Drex representatives demanded severe punishment, describing Amy as a violent savage who had attacked without provocation. Then Patricia began the defense. She called witnesses from the maintenance bay who had seen the challenge. One by one, they testified that Vorgath had spread his arms and demanded Amy hit him. He had mocked her and dared her to show her strength. The accused was responding to a direct challenge issued by the victim, Patricia argued. She did not attack. She accepted a challenge that was offered publicly. The Drex representative, a scarred warrior named Kron, stood to respond. "The challenge is a tradition of honor. The human was supposed to understand her place. When a Drex warrior offers such a challenge to a lesser being, the expected response is to decline out of respect." "How is my client supposed to know that?" Patricia shot back. "Humans have been on this station for less than 6 months. We are still learning your customs." The arguments went back and forth for hours. Amy stood silently, watching the alien faces debate her fate. She wondered if this was how it would end. Convicted by beings who saw humans as weak and ignorant. Then something unexpected happened. Krill stood up in the observation section. "I request permission to testify," the insectoid said, his voice clicking nervously. Judge Ven gestured for him to approach. Krill walked to the platform, his 6 legs moving in agitated patterns. "I have worked with Vorgath for 5 years, Krill began. "I wish to provide testimony about his behavior." The Drex representatives tried to object, but Judge Ven raised a hand for silence. "Speak." Krill's testimony opened a door that had been closed for years. He described in detail how Vorgath had bullied, stolen from, and assaulted workers in the lower decks, how he had destroyed equipment and blamed others, how he had created a climate of fear that made smaller species afraid to come to work. Then Pell stood up and asked to testify. The small Ven told stories of being shoved into walls, having his food stolen, being threatened with violence if he reported anything. More witnesses came forward. A thinker scientist described being extorted for credits. A floating whisper told of watching Vorgath break another being's limbs for speaking disrespectfully. The testimonies piled up, one after another, painting a picture of years of systematic abuse. The chamber grew silent as the full scope of Vorgath's behavior became clear. Judge Ven turned to the Drex representatives. "Were you aware of these complaints?" Kron shifted uncomfortably. "There may have been some minor incidents, but warriors are expected to maintain order with strength." "These are not minor incidents. These are documented cases of assault and theft. Judge Ven's four hands moved in a gesture of disapproval. Why were these complaints ignored? An investigation was ordered on the spot. Station security was required to provide all filed complaints about Vorgath. When the records appeared on the display screens, everyone in the chamber could see the truth. Dozens of complaints over 5 years. All of them filed. All of them marked as received, and all of them buried or dismissed without investigation. The tribunal had shifted. It was no longer just about Amy's actions. It was about corruption and abuse that had been allowed to continue unchecked. Judge Venn spent the next day reviewing the evidence. The tribunal called station security officers to explain why so many complaints had been ignored. The answers were uncomfortable. Some officers admitted they had been told by their superiors not to investigate complaints against Drex personnel. Others said they assumed the complaints were exaggerated because the Drex were a founding species and deserved respect. One security chief, a nervous being named Trill, finally admitted the truth. The Drex delegation made it clear that they would consider any action against their people as an insult. We were instructed by station administration to handle such matters carefully to avoid diplomatic incidents. Judge Ven's silver skin darkened with anger. So instead you allowed crimes to continue. You sacrificed the safety of station residents to avoid political discomfort. The tribunal grew more heated. Representatives from the smaller species demanded justice. The Drex delegation tried to maintain that this was all irrelevant to Amy's case, but their arguments sounded weak now. The corruption had been exposed, and everyone in the chamber could see it. On the third day, human scientists were called to testify. Dr. Helen Price, a biologist from Earth, approached the platform carrying a data tablet. "I have been asked to explain human physical capabilities," she began. "There seems to be confusion about what humans are capable of." She displayed information about Earth on the large screens. The planet rotated slowly, showing continents and oceans. Numbers appeared beside it showing atmospheric composition, gravity levels, and environmental conditions. "Earth has a surface gravity of 1.0 standard," Dr. Price explained. "This is significantly higher than most species in the Galactic Council. The Drex homeworld, for comparison, is 0.7 standard. The Kalari homeworld is 0.8. The Ven homeworld is 0.5. She brought up images of human anatomy. Bones, muscles, and skeletal structure appeared on the screens. "Humans evolved under this high gravity over millions of years. Our bones are extremely dense. Our muscles are built for strength and endurance. We are persistence hunters, capable of running for hours. Our bodies are designed to carry weight and deliver force in a high-gravity environment," a Drex representative interrupted. "Are you claiming humans are stronger than Drex warriors?" "Not stronger overall," Dr. Price said calmly, "but not as weak as everyone assumed. A human punch delivered by someone who weighs 70 kilograms carries significant kinetic energy. When Vorgath challenged Amy Rodriguez, he was expecting the force of a low-gravity species. He received the force of a high-gravity species that has been training under Earth conditions for her entire life. She showed calculations on the screen. The math was complex, but the conclusion was clear. Amy's punch had delivered roughly 30% more force than Vorgath expected, concentrated into a single point on his sternum. His scales were designed to deflect slashing attacks from claws, not to absorb blunt force trauma from a closed fist. The injury was severe but predictable given the physics involved, Dr. Price concluded. If Vorgath had properly understood human capabilities, he would never have issued that challenge. The revelation changed everything. Whispers spread through the chamber. Species that had dismissed humans as weak and unremarkable were now looking at Amy with new eyes. The small human standing on the platform had not just gotten lucky. She represented a species that was genuinely formidable in ways that had been overlooked. Judge Venn called for final arguments. Patricia stood and spoke clearly. My client acted in self-defense against a pattern of harassment that lasted months. She exhausted all official channels trying to resolve the situation peacefully. When physically confronted and challenged, she responded as any being would. She defended herself. The fact that her defense was effective does not make it criminal. Kron, the Drex representative, gave his final argument. But his words had less power now. Too much evidence had come to light about Vorgath's behavior and the systemic corruption that protected him. Judge Venn deliberated with the other tribunal members for 2 hours. When they returned, the chamber fell silent. "We have reached a decision," Judge Venn announced. "The charges against Amy Rodriguez are dismissed. The tribunal finds that she acted in self-defense after exhausting all peaceful options. Furthermore, the challenge issued by Vorgath was made under false assumptions about human capabilities. He bears responsibility for his own injury." Amy felt her legs go weak with relief. Patricia squeezed her shoulder. But Judge Venn was not finished. "However, this case has revealed serious problems with station administration and security. An official investigation will be opened into the handling of complaints against Drex personnel. All officers who ignored or buried complaints will face disciplinary action." He turned to the Drex delegation. "Vorgath will be stripped of his rank and face criminal charges for assault, theft, and abuse of authority. The Drex delegation will issue a formal apology to all species affected by his behavior." Kron stood stiffly. "The Drex do not apologize." "Then the Drex will find their privileges on this station greatly reduced," Judge Venn said coldly. "The choice is yours." The tribunal ended. Amy was released immediately. As she walked out of the chamber, beings she had never met approached to speak with her. A Venn elder thanked her for standing up to Vorgath. A thinker-scientist expressed admiration for her courage. Even some species that had previously ignored humans now regarded her with respect. Krill was waiting outside with Pell and Dax. The insectoid's antenna waved excitedly. "You are free. This is wonderful news." Amy hugged him carefully, mindful of his fragile exoskeleton. "Thank you for testifying. That took real courage." "You showed us courage first," Krill said. "You made us believe we could speak up." The next week, Amy returned to work in the maintenance bay. The atmosphere had changed completely. Vorgath was gone, transferred to a medical facility and then facing trial. The other Drex enforcers who had supported him were under investigation. New security protocols were in place, and every complaint was now taken seriously. The human delegation on Gateway Prime had mixed feelings about what happened. Linda Hayes still believed Amy had been reckless, but she could not argue with the results. Earth's position in the Galactic Council had actually improved. Other species now saw humans as a people who would defend themselves and others, not pushovers to be manipulated. Amy worked alongside Krill, Pell, and Dax, repairing the air filtration systems. The work was the same, but everything felt different. Workers from other species nodded to her in the corridors. No one blocked her path or took her tools anymore. One afternoon, a young human engineer named Kevin Brooks approached her during break. He had arrived on the station just the week before. "Everyone is talking about you," Kevin said nervously. "About what you did to that Drex. Is it true you knocked him down with one punch?" Amy looked at her bruised knuckles, which were finally healing. "It is true. But I did not want to hurt him that badly. I just wanted him to stop. Still, you are kind of famous now. What does it feel like?" Amy thought about the question. She did not feel like a hero. She felt tired and relieved that the ordeal was over. But she also felt something else. A sense that things had changed, not just for her, but for everyone who had been suffering in silence. "It feels like I did what needed to be done," she said finally. "I wish it had not come to that. I wish the system had worked the way it was supposed to. But it did not. So someone had to stand up." Kevin nodded thoughtfully. Some of the other humans are nervous now. They think we will all be seen as violent because of what happened. Maybe at first, Amy said, but I think the truth is more complicated. We are not looking for fights. We never were. But we are done backing down from them either. That evening, Amy stood at the window in her quarters looking out at the stars. Her hand still hurt when she made a fist, but it was getting better. Somewhere out there was Earth, her home world, where her family was probably worrying about her. She would write them tonight. She would tell them she was okay. She would explain what happened and why she made the choices she did. And she would tell them that she planned to stay on Gateway Prime and keep working, because running away was not who she was. Amy Rodriguez had come to the stars to build things, to fix broken systems and make things work better. She had fixed more than machinery. She had helped fix a system that allowed bullies to thrive. It was not perfect yet, and maybe it never would be, but it was better than it had been. And that was enough. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Sonnet 4.5.